All right, moving on to stratified squamous epithelium. So now our next figure here, 3.4, stratified squamous epithelium. Stratified because it's more than one cell layer thick. Squamous because the apical top cells are flattened. So stratified squamous epithelium. This is thicker, obviously, and good for protection. So the skin covering your body, your oral cavity is covered by a moist but stratified squamous epithelium. Think about, eating tortilla chips. They're going to be abrasive. They'll scratch a bit. So you need a thicker epithelium. There's keratinized and non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. So keratin is a nice, tough, strong protein that's produced by these epithelial cells. And the keratinized stratified squamous epithelium has a lot of keratin and gives the epithelium a lot of toughness and strength, but also prevents it from losing moisture. It's a dry epithelium. So that's what you have on your skin covering your body. Keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. But however, in your mouth and in your esophagus, your throat, that's a moist epithelium. So that's non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. There's not very much keratin, or not an abundant amount of keratin that's produced, and the epithelium secretes mucus to keep it moist and lubricated. Okay? So two types of stratified squamous epithelium: keratinized, dry; non-keratinized, wet. And of course, recognize locations and general functions, as is shown on your figure 3.4. Simple cuboidal. Simple, single layer of epithelial cells, and they are cuboidal in shape, kind of like an ice cube. And these are found internally within ducts and tubes within certain organs in the body. So they're good, and certain structures. They're good for secretion and absorption of material, because it's not a great distance to move across if it's only a single cell thick. Relatively easy to secrete or to absorb material across this epithelium. So for example, your kidney tubules, kidney, zooming in, this structure is referred to as a nephron, but this convoluted tubule, small tubule, is used to secrete items or to absorb items out of this opening passageway in the center, which is referred to as a lumen. Think of a garden hose, okay? If this was a garden hose, what would be moving through the middle would be water. And in my analogy of a garden hose, this simple cuboidal epithelium would be good for adding stuff into the water or removing stuff out of the water across this simple cuboidal epithelium. So these are internal within the body. And as I mentioned with an epithelium, there's always an edge, all right? So even though it's internal and it's a tube or a duct, there's still an edge. Here's the edge, there and or here. This is just an open, empty space. The lumen in this particular situation, all right? So let's see. Good for secretion and absorption. Found like in kidney tubules, sweat gland, ducts. Okay, now stratified cuboidal epithelium. The difference between simple cuboidal and stratified cuboidal epithelium is that there's more than one layer of cuboidal cells. And on an actual slide, picked a micrograph, it's not always super abundant, super easy to distinguish the more than one cell thick epithelium. But if you look here, where's my cursor? Here we go. There's one layer of nuclei, so that tells you that there are cells there. And then there's another layer. Even though you can't see all the nuclei, you can see some. So there's at least 1, 2, notice here, 1, 2, at least 2 cell layers thick. Now, it's not obvious where the plasma membrane is of every cell. It is in the diagram, in the drawing, all right, the lines. Here it's not, but what is obvious is the nuclei. And with cuboidal nuclei, cuboidal cells, the nuclei are very large, and it gives you an indication that if I can see nice round large nuclei, the cells most likely are cuboidal. All right, here the individual cells are pretty obvious. Over here it's not super obvious, but go with the shape and the size of the nuclei. Okay? So where can we find stratified cuboidal? In ducts of sweat glands and in the ducts of mammary glands. Okay? Excuse me. Okay, let's move on to simple columnar epithelium. One cell layer thick. The cells are elongated. So, simple columnar epithelium. Still good for secretion absorption. The epithelium is a bit thicker, but it's only one cell layer thick, found in the stomach, in the intestinal tract, part of the digestive tract. Whoop, sorry. Does offer some protection. And in the picture here, this particular simple columnar epithelium does have microvilli, which increases surface area, as we've discussed already. So in the small intestine, for example, intestinal tract, that increases surface area to maximize absorption of nutrients. Nutrients get shipped across the columnar cells, move down to the blood vessels in the underlying connective tissue, and then now you get nutrients into your bloodstream to deliver throughout your body. Excuse me. Okay. Pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium, often called PCCE. So the reason this is called pseudostratified is because it appears to be stratified. The nuclei are at different heights. So one would think, well, multiple layers of nuclei, it's got to be more than one cell layer thick. However, that's false. Pseudo means false. All of the cells are attached to the basement membrane, but not all of them actually reach the apical surface. So it's kind of a weird epithelium. It's not technically stratified, so it's referred to as pseudostratified. Ciliated because there's cilia in the apical cells, and columnar because the cells are essentially all columnar in shape. Okay, this is found in our respiratory passages: nasal cavity, trachea, windpipe, and the bronchi that are branching into the lungs. And the cilia, as we'll talk about later, excuse me, the cilia move because they have components of the cytoskeleton within them. You can go back and refer to that in the previous chapter. And the epithelium secretes mucus. So the respiratory tract is covered in mucus. When you breathe in particulate matter like dust, debris, it lands on the mucus. The cilia move, and they move the mucus, in this case from the trachea and bronchi up to the back of the throat, where you either swallow it or spit it out. In the nasal cavity, the cilia move in the opposite direction, and the cilia move the mucus with trapped particulate matter down towards the esophagus, throat, where you either swallow or spit it out. And we'll talk about that more later when we do the respiratory system. So PCCE, another epithelium. Transitional epithelium. This is another kind of oddball one because it has transitional appearances depending if whether this epithelium is stretched out or not stretched out, if it's relaxed. So what do we mean by stretched out? Think of your urinary bladder. When it's empty, your urinary bladder, the inner lining epithelium, the stratified epithelium, has apical cells that look cuboidal. But one main function of your bladder is to fill with urine and store urine until you're ready to urinate. When the bladder fills, this transitional epithelium stretches out, and the apical cells can actually look squamous. So the appearance of this epithelium changes, so it is transitional in appearance. And it's only found in a few places: urinary bladder, renal pelvis, part of the kidneys, and then the ureters. So this one is called transitional epithelium. And if we look at it on a slide for lab, it will always be shown in the relaxed condition where the apical cells are characteristically large and appear to be cuboidal, right? So multiple cells thick, apical cells are cuboidal. It's like, the relaxed stage or relaxed condition of transitional epithelium, like in the urinary bladder. All right? Oh, I forgot about that. Okay, try not to get myself in trouble with you guys. Okay, glandular epithelium. So, glandular epithelium is modified epithelial cells that produce material, secretions, hence glands, glandular epithelium. So, there are two types of secretion methods of glandular epithelium. Where's my cursor? Here we go. One is exocrine glands. So exocrine glands, they secrete material onto the surface of like your skin via ducts. So this occurs in the respiratory system, also in the digestive system, and on your skin. So there's a duct, tube. So there are cells that are called exocrine cells. In an exocrine gland, they produce material, think of, say, sweat, and that's moved to the surface of the epithelium, like your skin, via a tube, a duct. So that makes it an exocrine gland or an exocrine type of secretion. The other type is endocrine glandular secretion. So an endocrine gland, in this diagram here, that's the yellow cells that secrete material, just the way these yellow cells are secreting material. Endocrine glands secrete material, and they secrete it directly into the surrounding environment, into the extracellular environment. And then endocrine glands are highly vascularized. There's lots of blood capillaries. So the material then enters directly into the bloodstream and is transported throughout the body. So as you see here, these pink cells are the endocrine gland cells. They secrete their material and it enters directly into the blood capillaries here in blue. And then that material is delivered throughout the body by the blood supply, the cardiovascular system. And when we do the endocrine system, it's referred to as the endocrine system because all of those glands secrete their material directly into the bloodstream. There's no duct or no tube, so they are ductless glands. All right, so let's look at other methods of secretion at the cellular level. Okay, so eccrine secretion, also called merocrine secretion. This is a type of secretion where the secretory cells, the cells that produce the secretions, release the secretions via secretory vesicles. And on a previous chapter, we referred to this as or we looked at this example for proteins that are produced for secretion. The Golgi apparatus, that's what this is, packages the material for secretion into secretory vesicles. They reach the plasma membrane, the vesicles fuse with the membrane, and the material is secreted. For secretion of materials at the glandular level or glandular cells, this type of secretory method is referred to as eccrine or merocrine secretion. Okay, and these glands would be, eccrine or merocrine glands. So the serous cells of the salivary glands, your salivary glands that produce saliva, produce it by eccrine or merocrine secretion. All right? Here we go. Another method of secretion is called apocrine secretion. So with apocrine secretion, the top portion, the apical portion of the cell, is actually lost along with the secretory vesicles. So it's like the cells sacrifice part of their cell, and that is sloughed off, so the secretory material along with a portion of the cell is secreted. So this is the type of secretion called apocrine secretion, and that occurs in the lactiferous cells that are producing mother's milk in the mammary glands of the female. So another secretory method. And then the cells regrow and just simply secrete